McFarlane Toys has released a classic penguin as part of its DC Multiverse Collector Edition line, but should you flock to stores to pluck him from the shelves? Or is this jailbird a goose egg? Starting off with the packaging and an extra-wide character, Penguin comes in an extra-wide window box. An extra-wide window box with silver accents. Mr. Cobblepot is number 12 in the Collector Edition series, and is listed as DC Classic. Flipping around back, and yep, it doesn't get much more classic than that. This image was taken from the cover of Batman 287. We've got some good old-timey Penguin artwork. From the looks of it, he's flying around on that monster from the giant claw, and based on Batman's expression, even he can't believe it. For those who prefer to do their bird hunting in stores, and here's the UPC, and for packaging, I'm giving the Penguin 5 points. Moving on to presentation, and to the tip of his top hat, Penguin stands at 6.5 inches, and shares a lot more reuse with the Arkham City version than I previously expected. Most notably, their lower halves are the same. Additionally, their top hats are the same, as are their upper arms. The fact that regular comic Penguin's coat has some texture doesn't really bother me. One thing they did do, which was nice, was go in and add some dry brushing to bring some of that texture out, and flipping it around, I really appreciate all the fabric tugs and seams. Even little details like this make it seem very lifelike. And of course I love how long the tails are. Back to the front, we see more of those fabric tugs. You really get the sense that Penguin has been stuffed into this suit and could pop out at the seams at any second. On that note, I will say that while a lot of times overweight characters don't translate well into action figure form, here they've done a pretty decent job. Looking at a couple of other classic Penguins, and there's a tendency to make his limbs a bit long and gangly. Here, while I do think the arms could be a hair shorter, the proportions are much better. While I'm here, I should probably point out that the closest relative to this particular Penguin is DC Universe Classics. I say that because of their matching orange vests. In fact, the vest is one of my only quibbles with this figure. The orange on the DC Universe Classics is a dull, more burned pumpkin orange. Here, the orange is almost neon. Is he a criminal mastermind or a crossing guard? It's almost like he was sentenced to sanitation duty and decided to keep the vest. There is a bit of shading in there though, so I do appreciate that, as well as some nice texture. My only other quibble are the pants, mainly just that I wish that they would have pinstriped them. Overall though, this Penguin is excellent, most especially the head. I love that they committed to the long nose and also that winged hair. There's also some really nice shading. It would have been cool if they could have done the monocle as a separate clear piece, but this still looks good. And as far as comic style Penguin heads go, I think this is the best one we've ever gotten. The only thing missing is this hoity-toity cigarette holder, but I think we all know that there is no way they're putting that on a children's toy aisle. Clipping his wings ever so slightly over that neon orange vest, and for presentation I'm giving the Penguin 4 points. Moving on to Poseability, and Penguin's unique proportions means McFarlane had to make some unique articulation choices. From the top though, and one thing we can almost always count on is that Penguin's head is on a dumbbell joint. Popping his head off for a moment though, and you'll notice it's actually fairly hollow. This gives a bit more gappiness than usual, but thanks to that gappiness he can look up this far, but he can only turn his beakish nose down this far. He also gets a very nice amount of tilt, and of course all the way around. Moving down, and Penguin can flap his arms upwards of 90 degrees, and 90 degrees is a lot for a Penguin. Near as I can tell, there's no rotator cuff, but we do still get a little bit of wobble in the joint. We also get bicep swivel and double jointed elbows with a very deep end. Given how stocky Penguin is, I feel like the temptation is there to just have done this as a single jointed swivel, so I'm really happy McFarlane decided to go all out. At the ends of the arms are wrist balls nicely hidden by the cuff of the jacket. The downside is that that cuff does get in the way, so the range isn't as good as it could be. They can swivel and hinge either up or down or side to side. Shifting to the torso, and thanks to Penguin's famous gut, his entire midsection is just one giant dumbbell. He can arch back this far, which is already pretty impressive, but I get the sense that if it wasn't for the coattails, he could arch back even further. Arching him back though, and you can see the seam of the pants up here. Additionally, Penguin has a pretty good hunch forward. Yeah, of course, this Penguin gets a really great amount of waddle and twist. Moving down, and although they are a bit thicker than usual, Penguin has the typical McFarlane hips. He can only kick this high, but all things considered I think that's serviceable. Likewise, he can only split this wide. I'm not getting as much twist in the hip as I'd like, but that's okay because all Penguin has are single jointed swivel knees. They can only bend 45 degrees. 45 degrees is much better for a penguin, but they can swivel. And that's handy because although Penguin does have ankle balls, the cuffs of his pants keep him from swiveling all the way around. They also do get in the way of hinge and pivot. No problem with articulation though. As good of a job as McFarlane has done given this partridge's plump frame, there are still some limitations. So for Poseability, I'm giving the Penguin a still very respectable 4 points. Moving on to Playability, and while he doesn't come with a whole lot, I really do appreciate the things he does come with. First things first, of course, he comes with a trading card and one of those $10 trading card stands. The card itself is a nice cross-section of the artwork from the box, and has fancy silver foil. If you want to read what it says though, feel free to pause here. Naturally, Penguin comes with a figure stand. Otherwise, Oswald comes with his signature umbrella. It's actually the same exact one that came with Arkham City. Of course, the handle is in the shape of a bird. McFarlane did a great job of making this look like a lifelike umbrella, all tightly wound up, and then we have a gold tip. In terms of posing options, he can hold it like a cane. He can also brandish his bumbershoot like a sword, or aim it like a rifle. Additionally, even though it's a wider grip, he can hold it in his left hand as well. That said, Penguin does come with an alternate left open hand and an alternate right-handed fist. It would have been easy for them to just give him the umbrella and call it a day, but I'm really glad that they didn't. But Playability is more than just accessories, it's also about how well your figure flocks with others. For the other Penguins in my aviary, and here we have Superpowers and Batman Returns by Kenner, there is a Platinum edition of this Penguin in those Superpowers colors. Also by Kenner, and here we have Legends of the Dark Knight, as well as the Silver Age version by DC Direct. For a couple of white suit options, and here's a couple more from DC Direct, it's a variation I actually wouldn't mind seeing this Penguin in. For something a bit more animated, and here we have The Batman by Mattel. And speaking of Mattel, here we have DC Universe Classics and Batman Legacy. For something else a bit more animated, and here we have the animated series version by DC Collectibles. As for live action, and here we have Burgess Meredith by Mattel and McFarlane. And then moving squarely over to McFarlane, and here we have Colin Farrell from the Batman movie, and Arkham City. I've got to say, so far McFarlane's been pretty good to the Penguin. For those who were curious, by the way, and here's the classic head on the Arkham City body. It does technically fit, but the combination of hair and furry coat really pushes the head forward, making that gap a lot more pronounced. Likewise, you can do the other way around, but I frankly just don't think it looks as good on this body. Of course, you know what they say about birds of a feather, so for some other villains, and here we have Rebirth and clown versions of the Joker, as well as Mortal Kombat 11. For Catwoman, and here we have Arkham City and Nightfall. I really wish Nightfall would have been closer to that shade of purple. And then for one more rogue, and here we have DC Classic and Arkham City versions of the Riddler. As for Batman himself, I thought I'd start with some classic versions, so here we have Nightfall. Next up is Year 2 in his very Superpowers colors, and the Walmart exclusive variant of Detective Comics 1000. For just a few more though, and here we have 3 Jokers, Rebirth, who almost makes Penguin look tall, fan favorite Arkham City, the blue and gray version of Hush, and since Penguin dates back to the Golden Age, here's Detective Comics 27. Here's Penguin with a pebble, but for a relative scale comparison, here he is with Pizza Spidey and the Spectacular Spider-Man, and as always, here he is with Stealth Iron Man. You know, this really does make me feel taller. For Playability, I'm giving the Penguin 5 points. This leaves us with nothing left to discuss but the price. I get that he's a bit chunkier and has a lot more new tooling, but at $30, I'm calling foul. Even so, this is still the best classic comic book style Penguin we've ever gotten in action figure form, so even though he's a bit too much, you'd be a dodo to let this bird fly the coop. Coming up a little short in the cost department, and for price, I'm giving the Penguin 3 points, averaging out to a grand total of 4.2 out of 5. If you like this video, check out one of these. Thank you so much for watching. I'll be back again real soon, but until then, play nice and have fun.